Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump will have a press conference with the FBI director this afternoon on reducing violent crime across the country. We'll bring it to you live. The Supreme Court today heard a second challenge to Louisiana's congressional district map. The case revisits what role race plays in drawing district lines. President Trump says a list will be released soon of Democrat-backed programs that will be cut. We discussed this with the guest panel. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent optimistic that trade tensions with China can de-escalate. But he has a message of caution to U.S. allies amid China's economic coercion. Israel says one of the bodies returned by Hamas isn't a hostage, an unsettling discovery straining the fragile truce in the two-year war.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. A vote in the Senate to fund the federal government failed again yesterday, with 49 votes in favor and 45 opposed, which needs 60 votes to pass. We are now on day 15 of the government shutdown. Republicans are emphasizing the sacrifice that service members are making, while Democrats are pointing to challenges to health care. Here's more from their leaders today.
One segment of the population that truly deserves better treatment than the Democrats are giving them, and that is our military. Today, if it weren't for the bold leadership of President Trump helping us to protect our military, everyone needs to understand that 1.3 million active duty service members would be missing a paycheck. They'll get their check, thankfully, because President Trump has shown strong leadership. And under his direction, the Department of War has now redirected unspent funds to ensure that our troops are taken care of. And this is while Democrats are playing political games. Last night, they played some games. They stormed my office.
Donald Trump promised to love and cherish Medicaid. Instead, Republicans enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. That's unacceptable. Republicans falsely claim now to be the party of health care, but their policies are closing hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers all throughout the country. That's unacceptable. The Trump administration is giving $20 billion to bail out a right-wing wannabe dictator in Argentina. But Republicans are unwilling to spend a dime to provide affordable health care to working-class Americans. That's unacceptable. The American people deserve better.
House Speaker Mike Johnson presented numbers of service members in each Democrat-run state. He said, of the 10 states with the largest military population, 6 are represented by 2 Democrats in the Senate. He accused the Democrats of taking hostage of the troops to play political games. On the Democrat side, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said his party is fighting the, quote, broken healthcare system and high costs of living. He said it's time to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits and prevent rising healthcare premiums. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said today the 2-week-old federal government shutdown is costing the U.S. economy about $15 billion a day in lost output. He urges Democrats to be heroes and side with the Republicans to end it. Also during the meeting with Argentina's President Javier Milei yesterday, President Trump said his administration will release a list on Friday of Democrat programs to be permanently cut amid the ongoing government shutdown. Now, the Trump administration is condemning the Chinese regime's latest restrictions on rare earth products. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Secretary Scott of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, provided the latest updates today. Listen.
China's announcement is nothing more than a global supply chain power grab. While China has taken a number of retaliatory trade actions against the United States, Europe, Canada, Australia, and others in recent years, this move is not proportional retaliation. It is an exercise in economic coercion on every country in the world. At its core, China's new measures include a rule saying that any product of which more than 0.1% of minerals consist of minerals mined or processed in China one must seek approval from the Chinese government before trading it. Since many important semiconductors, for example, have these critical minerals, and semiconductors are in nearly everything, this rule gives China control over basically the entire global economy and the technology supply chain.
Korea said China's export controls are a clear repudiation of the past 6 months of trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Besson is optimistic that the trade tensions can de-escalate. He said the U.S. has had substantial communication with China over the past few days, and there will be more this week. The Treasury Secretary noted that the Trump administration wants to help China, not hurt it. That's because a slowdown in the global economy will hurt China the most. But he stressed that China cannot be trusted with the global supply chain.
This should be a clear sign to our allies that we must work together, and work together we will. There will be a series of meetings this week during World Bank IMF week, and we are all aligned. Not only is China fueling Russia's war, but China's actions have once again demonstrated the risk of being dependent on them on rare earths, and for that matter, anything. If China wants to be an unreliable partner to the world, then the world will have to decouple. The world does not want to decouple. We want to de-risk. But signals like this are signs of decoupling, which we don't believe China wants. And again, we do not want to decouple. We should work together to de-risk and diversify our supply chains away from China as quickly as possible.
Korea said there are a lot of low-risk areas where the U.S. can trade with China. Besson emphasized that the U.S. will not be commanded or controlled by China's economic coercion. He noted that President Trump is still expected to meet with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea at the end of the month. And China's new restrictions on rare earth exports are raising concerns in Europe. European officials say the EU is teaming up with the U.S. and other G7 partners to craft a united response to the Chinese Communist Party. China, the world's top rare earth producer, just tightened its export rules, adding new elements and restrictions for semiconductor makers ahead of planned talks between Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping. The EU Trade Commissioner yesterday called the move unjustified, saying EU ministers meeting in Denmark see it as a critical concern. He said the G7 could hold a video call this week to coordinate next steps, including potential plans to diversify supply chains and speed up new mining projects. The Danish foreign minister urged Europe to stay tough and united, but also to work closely with Washington. Trump, meanwhile, has threatened China with 100% tariffs, sparking a brief sell-off on Wall Street. Today in Washington, Supreme Court justices are weighing race-based redistricting. Oral arguments are underway in the case focused on Louisiana. The ruling could have ripple effects for several other states that plan to redraw their lines or have already done so. NTD's Melina Weisskopf was in front of the court. She tells us what's on the line.
It is a Louisiana-focused case, but the implications could stretch much further than Louisiana. Look, if the justices side with Louisiana, this could enable red states to more easily redraw their lines that could give Republicans a stronger edge in the 2026 midterms. Now, Steph, the crux of the question before the justices today is whether the popular interpretation of the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is constitutional or not. Now, emotions are high out here. As you see behind me, there's a group of protesters who have been gathering here outside of the court steps since early this morning, and emotions are high for good reason. This argument today is important, Steph. Look, the fact that justices asked the lawyers before the case to come for a second argument in this same case is a rare occasion, and it indicates that justices might be preparing to make a major change to the law here. Now, arguments are still underway right now. I want to listen to what both sides have said before the justices. Listen in.
That race is playing an outsized role in the electoral process in Louisiana. And so the idea that you have to show that a party, is the reason for the racially polarized voting would eclipse the entire Section 2 analysis, which is focused on ferreting out and ending race discrimination in the political process.
You said several times that it's playing an outsized role. Is there, and what's the proper size? In other words, is that wiggle room we're talking about, or a significant percentage? What is meant by outsized?
So this court has held for a long time, beginning in Shaw and in many cases since, that there's always an awareness of race. There are always racial considerations and even race consciousness in the districting process. What becomes potentially unlawful is when race is the motivating factor.
Embedded within these express targets are racial stereotypes that this court has long criticized. They assume, for example, that a black voter, simply because he is black, must think like other black voters, share the same interests, and prefer the same political candidates. And this stereotyping system has no logical endpoint. We are 40 years removed from Jingles, and yet, according to my friends on the other side, nothing has changed in the voting and housing patterns in Louisiana that require race-based redistricting. These problems are part of why we never wanted to be here in the first place. They have placed states in impossible situations where the only sure demand is more racial discrimination for more decades.
Now, to get into the details a little bit, the deal here is that Louisiana initially had one black majority district. Then it was ordered by a lower court to create a second black majority district. Then a group of non-black voters sued to try to reverse this. So that's sort of what's going on in the nitty-gritty of the case. The ruling that justices give here will determine whether Louisiana can keep its current map as is with the two black majority districts or has to redraw these maps. And that could endanger possibly the Democrat incumbent Cleo Fields. But of course, we know there are more than 20 other black majority districts across the nation that could also be impacted by this case. And we know that, of course, Republicans have a very slim majority in Congress. So any of these changes could lead to Republicans holding on to their majority and even expanding it come 2026. Now, court experts have suggested and predicted that what justices may do here is to rule that race-based redistricting is unconstitutional, but just limit the scope of the order so that the decision's effect will have a limited scope there.
The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments in Louisiana versus Calais, a gerrymandering case involving Louisiana's congressional map. Joining us to discuss is Bobby Ann Cox, civil rights attorney, fellow at the Brownstone Institute, and legal analyst. So good afternoon, Bobby Ann, to you. You know, this case challenges the legality of Louisiana's creation of a second black majority congressional district. And I understand you actually listened in on the oral arguments. Can you just give us your overall feeling? What stood out to you based on what you heard? Was there any preference at all indicated by the judges on one side or the other?
Well, it did seem for the part of the oral arguments that I listened to, I believe they're still going on now, but it did seem like the justices were asking questions of the attorneys, which indicated, you know, where they thought this case should come out. And it seemed to be divided on party line, really. The three liberal justices seemed to be asking questions that were clearly indicating that they felt like, you know, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act should stand and remain and was not unconstitutional. Whereas you saw the other six justices, who are the more conservative justices on SCOTUS, they were asking questions of the attorneys that seemed to be more defining on, you know, this is a violation. You know, the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is a violation of our 14th Amendment and our 15th Amendment of our federal Constitution. So their questions did seem to be falling along party lines, with the six conservative justices leaning more towards the idea that in this particular instance, yeah, the Voting Rights Act, you know, Section 2 is a violation of our 14th and 15th Amendments. And, you know, just to be clear, this is the second time the United States Supreme Court is hearing this particular case. They decided not to rule on it last term, although they did hear the case. And they told the attorneys for both sides to come back this session, which is why we're here again today, to come back this session and argue a slightly different point, which is whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is constitutional, or does it violate the 14th and 15th Amendments? So they purposely pointed to this specific topic, which will have far-spread implications depending on which way the justices come down, because this is now talking about an entire section of the Voting Rights Act, which will affect other cases and other states.
So can I get your thoughts on whether, the counter-argument, whether Section 2 protect minority voters from having their voting power reduced?
Yes. So the intent of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is to basically protect all Americans with their right to vote. And it says that you can't discriminate against somebody because of their either their ethnic origin or they belong to a certain ethnic group, for example, Italian Americans or Chinese Americans or something like this. So the intent of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is to make sure that, hey, we want everyone, all Americans, to be able to have proper access to the polls. And we also want them to have their vote count. So it basically is a provision put in this law to protect you, no matter what your ethnic origin is or the color of your skin. The problem lies with the fact that how you interpret that and how you apply that language in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act can, in fact, be a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendments of our federal Constitution, which say, in essence, the 14th Amendment says that everybody has equal rights, equal protections under our laws. So you can't discriminate and apply our laws differently to different people just because of your ethnicity, your national origin, or the color of your skin. And then the 15th Amendment says, in essence, that you can't discriminate against somebody, with the right to vote because of their skin color or their ethnicity or their national origin, in essence, right? So I'm paraphrasing these two amendments to our Constitution. So the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act comes in direct conflict with, for example, the 15th Amendment of our Constitution, which says, well, you can't discriminate based on someone's, let's say, in this instance of this case in Louisiana, their skin color. But then Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says, well, we want to protect you so that your skin color does matter, right? So it's a very fine line between Section 2 language of the Voting Rights Act and our 14th and 15th Amendments. And I think the way that Section 2 language has been interpreted in some of these cases is indeed a violation of the voting right. Is indeed a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendment of our federal Constitution. So this is a very interesting and very important case. And we'll see how SCOTUS comes down on this, but it can definitely have far-reaching repercussions.
So I understand your points, but if we look historically, have courts, allowed race to be a factor in drawing districts?
So race is not supposed to be the sole factor. It's not supposed to be the only reason that you draw a congressional district. It can be taken into account, is what the law says, but it's not supposed to be the only thing that is looked at when you draw a congressional district, because that would indeed, undoubtedly, be a violation of our Constitution. So courts in the past have allowed race to be one of the factors that are taken into account when these congressional lines are drawn in the states. It doesn't matter what state it is. But again, fine line here, because race can't be the only thing they look at. Otherwise, that is unconstitutional. It would be discrimination. whether your skin is white or black or, some color in between. You're not allowed to have that as the main focus or the only focus of why you're drawing a district. So yes, it's definitely a fine line, and there's a lot of gray area. How much has a court, in a court decision, how much have they allowed race to be an element of determination in how that district was drawn? Right? It's a very gray area. There's not a straight a straight line in the sand that says, once you cross this line, you are now all of a sudden using race as the main issue or the main determining factor in how you draw those lines. So it is a gray area, and it's not something that's black and white.
Okay, I think you explained it pretty clearly here. I'll just ask you one more question. And Bobby Ann, I was looking into this a bit earlier today, and I found that we've seen cases like Allen versus Milligan, right, where the court upheld Section 2. So is Louisiana versus Calais similar or different from that case?
Yeah, it is slightly different. And here's the issue. This is actually one of the points that they were arguing during oral arguments earlier this afternoon that I was listening to. And it is a different case. The facts were different in that case. And the problem is that, as I said earlier, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the language can be interpreted by courts across the country and differently. And it can be applied differently by the courts across the country, depending on how they're interpreting that language. So, as I said, if you take Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and under Milligan, the Supreme Court did not decide in that case whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is on its face, meaning the plain language of Section 2, is unconstitutional, is a violation of Amendment 14 or the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution. They did not decide that in the essence or in the circumstances of this language being applied to the gerrymandering or trying to avoid the gerrymandering of lines, or congressional lines. So the cases are different, and this has not yet been decided by the United States Supreme Court. And I hope that they do decide this, because they asked for this point, this one issue, to be decided. They asked the attorneys to come back. They asked them to do briefings specifically on this point. They asked them to come back and re-argue this case specifically on this point in this session. So I do think we're going to get a ruling from them on this point in this session. And it's going to be extremely important, because what they decide here, if they say that Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional on its face, and they strike it down. Now, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think perhaps a certain provision within Section 2 might be struck down, but I don't think they're going to take the entire Section 2 out of the Voting Rights Act. But this is an extremely important case, because if they do say that part of Section 2 is a violation of the 14th or 15th Amendment of the Constitution, then that's now going to open the door to other districts in other states being redrawn. And as you know, the congressional races that are coming up in 2026 affect the whole country. So who wins in what state does affect the balance of the whole country.
Yeah, it looks like, seems like the impact could be wide-ranging. It's always great to talk to you, and we'll be following this, Bobby Ann, sorry. We'll be following this very closely, and pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Israel says one of the bodies returned by Hamas isn't a hostage, and unsettling discoveries draining the fragile truce in the 2-year war. Stay tuned.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
Did you know Mathis Home has been giving their customers the best styles and value for 65 years? Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings on everything in the store. This set is a great deal. You get the modern trestle table with 4 comfy side chairs, the complete set for just $8.89. With over 100 dining sets in stock, you're sure to find the one just right for your family and get free delivery. Get your new dining room now with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
The Israeli military said one of the bodies handed over by the Hamas terror group yesterday is not a hostage who was held in Gaza. The development has added tensions over the fragile truce in the 2-year war. 4 bodies were handed over by Hamas yesterday to ease pressure on the ceasefire, following 4 on Monday. In all, Israel has been awaiting the return of the bodies of 28 deceased hostages. Israel is also handing over bodies of Palestinians under the deal. There was no immediate word on whose body it was. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu demanded today that Hamas fulfill the requirements laid out in the ceasefire deal. Netanyahu said Israel will not compromise on this. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister met with released Israeli hostages at a hospital in central Israel last night. And continuing with the Middle East, a convoy of trucks carrying food, fuel, and medical supplies drove through the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing today, according to local authorities. Aid to Gaza was paused for the past 2 days due to the prisoner and hostage exchange on Monday and a Jewish holiday yesterday. The convoy of 400 trucks includes 5,700 tons of food supplies, 1,400 tons of medical supplies, and about 2,500 tons of fuel. An Israeli doctor says the released hostages under his care are in stable condition, but he said they may need months or even years to heal. The doctor is treating 10 of the 20 survivors of Hamas captivity.
I'm happy to report that they are all in stable condition. While I cannot share more specific details, we remember that every one of them has endured untold adversity and horrors. and therefore the road for the recovery is going to be a very long one.
He added that the rehabilitation process began at the hospital, where the hostages will spend a few more days. Some may be discharged to outpatient care beginning next week. The doctor explained the process is tailored and very specific to each hostage, depending on their condition. Right now, the hospital is focusing on their physical, medical, and nutritional care. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with some of the released hostages at a different hospital. The 20 hostages are being treated at 3 different hospitals. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is in Brussels today. He said that commitments from NATO countries will translate into enhanced firepower. Here he is.
Firepower. That's what is coming, we expect, and is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons, transfer to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned under President Trump, is the active application of peace through strength.
Hegseth said that strength doesn't mean using strong words or wagging your finger. The War Secretary remarked that you achieve peace by having strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect. Today's meeting of NATO defense ministers aims to boost military support for Ukraine. As new data shows, Western aid has fallen by 43% in recent months. NATO Secretary Mark Rutte said continued support deters Russian aggression. His remarks come amid rising tensions from drone incursions and Russian airspace violations. Defense ministers also discussed lifting restrictions on NATO equipment to better defend the alliance's eastern borders. Louisiana is taking a stand against foreign AI threats. Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order on Monday banning Chinese AI tools like DeepSeek from schools, universities, and state agencies. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has this report.
The order targets AI systems run by hostile foreign governments like the Chinese Communist regime. It references national security and privacy concerns. Landry pointed to programs like DeepSeek, which federal investigators say can spread propaganda and transfer Americans' personal data to China. The governor said the move is about putting Louisiana and the U.S. first by protecting students, state agencies, and sensitive data from potential spying. He said, quote, as technology advances, so do the threats, adding that this order is designed to safeguard both people and national security.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. Los Angeles County has declared a local emergency over federal immigration enforcement, a move rarely used outside natural disasters. Supervisors voted 4-1 to allow measures such as an eviction moratorium for renters who can prove financial hardship tied to ICE operations. Supporters say aggressive federal raids have spread fear and disrupted communities. The declaration also opens the door for state funding to support affected residents. Supervisor Catherine Barger cast the lone no vote, warning the move doesn't meet emergency standards and could invite lawsuits. Federal ICE raids have intensified across Southern California this year, leading to hundreds of arrests and widespread protests. A Supreme Court ruling in September cleared the way for ICE to proceed with enforcement, rejecting claims of racial bias in the detentions. The Coast Guard says it has seized more than 100,000 pounds of cocaine since launching Operation Pacific Viper. One of the most recent operations was pulling bales of cocaine from the Pacific Ocean after a suspect drug boat capsized. Under Operation Pacific Viper, the agency said it has worked with international partners to intercept more than 30 ships and make over 85 arrests. Since the launch in August, the Coast Guard said it has seized an average of 1,600 pounds of cocaine a day. And President Trump says a list will be released soon of Democrat-backed programs that will be cut. Joining us to discuss is George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon, and we have Matt Klink, Republican strategist and political analyst. Good afternoon to you. It's good to have you both here. George, I'll start with you. So what programs exactly could the president be talking about here?
Well, I think the president's probably going to continue his path on defunding the education system. We'll probably see a cutoff from infrastructure on green energy projects throughout the country. I think he'll also continue to look at subsidies right now because of the shutdown and holding strong on not continuing those subsidies. I also think that he is going to try to put more money in what he says are, successful programs for Republicans, which I think it'll probably be, he'll want to invest into law enforcement and also into more border security and deportation tactics.
So Matt, what are your thoughts here? President Trump framing some of these programs as, semi-communist or socialist. Your thoughts?
Well, look, yeah, there were a lot of programs that the Democratic infrastructure and deep Washington, D.C. has funded for generations that, frankly, had no particular benefit to the broader American public, but they did fund Democrat-specific priorities. I will find it ironic that funding tougher law enforcement, that's not a Republican priority, that's an American priority. But aside from that, Donald Trump, because again, as Barack Obama said, elections have consequences. Donald Trump is going to make it hurt, particularly for Democrats. I will add, though, that Donald Trump is going to get the troops paid today on the 15th. And ironically enough, again, Trump is a master at this. You had the Democrats arguing that Donald Trump couldn't do that. So again, to take an issue, an 80-20 issue, the Republicans take the 80, the Democrats get the 20. They're arguing against paying the troops. So look, the Republicans just want to reopen the government. They have passed a clean continuing resolution, something that the Democrats have done 13 times under Joe Biden. They're not pushing any new policy proposals in this clean CR proposal. And Chuck Schumer, because he fears a run from his left by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is keeping the government closed. And he's not going to be able to hold the American people hostage.
So George, can I get a response to what you heard Matt said? And how do you feel about the framing of President Trump for these programs as semi-communist or socialist?
So I think it's humorous because one is the fact that Republicans have control of the White House and Congress, both the House and the Senate. We are the minority, and we're standing strong right now in order to be able to protect healthcare for millions of people. And Republicans, their backup is against the wall right now with this government shutdown. They're going to have to own it. There's too many Americans that are going to see an increase in their healthcare premiums, and they're not going to be insurable. And so right now, Republicans continue to lie about the reasons why this government shutdown is happening. If they really want to open up the government, then they need to learn to have some sort of bipartisan conversation and not just have meetings within their own caucus and passing bills without any sort of Democratic support. So right now, it's really on the Republicans. They're going to own it, and they're going to feel it in the midterms.
So Matt, can I get a response from you? So George mentioned bipartisan negotiations, right? How do you respond to a talking point from the Democratic side that this continuing resolution has no Democratic input?
Well, actually, first of all, it does have Democratic votes. It got Democratic votes in the United States Senate. And as the Democratic talking point in Georgia, because of the Senate rules that require 60 votes, we need 8 Senate Democrats to vote affirmatively. We have 4 right now. So eventually, as the pressure builds on the Schumer shutdown, ultimately, the Democrats are going to come back to the table with their tail between their legs, and they'll reopen the government. All the Republicans are saying is, let's open the government, and then we can have as many conferences on health care. I really am looking forward to one, illegal immigrants in the health care bill, and 2 is that during COVID, with the bipartisanship that George just mentioned, The Democrats passed temporary increases to Obamacare. They now want to extend those temporary increases and make them permanent. Only in Washington, temporary spending increase a permanent spending increase. And the Republicans are just saying, we can even have that conversation. But let's open.
All right, Matt, you were actually breaking up a little bit just now, so I'll go to George here.
Okay.
We heard bits and pieces of what you said, but some of it we were lost due to the connection. So, George, do you think the cuts are necessary right now due to the shutdown?
So I think what needs to happen is Republicans need to show some good faith here. Every time we try to negotiate when we don't have any control, they go back on their word. They push bills that are not good for the American people. And right now with Democrats, they're saying no. They're drawing a line in the sand, and they're saying we're not going to see millions of Americans lose their healthcare coverage. And right now it is on the House and the Senate to reconvene, find a way to be able to negotiate and figure out right now, how can we provide a temporary solution before we can have the longer conversation of these subsidies, of how we can create a policy that is not going to devastate Americans throughout this country. And understand that it is a domino effect. When you affect people's accessibility to healthcare, that hurts the US economy. It hurts consumer spending. So we really need to be able to take a look at this and say, okay, let's open up the government, let's find some common ground, let's get a bill that is passable. But right now, with the way Republicans are behaving, they're not willing to have conversations. They're putting lawmakers on recess while there's still workers right now, like TSA and air traffic controllers. They're expected to show up and they're not getting paid, but yet our lawmakers are, and yet they're not in session.
So George, House Minority Leader Jeffries says he agrees with making sure that uniform active duty troops are paid, but House Speaker Mike Johnson accused Democrats of voting 8 times to block their paychecks. He was referring to their votes on the stopgap bill, which would fund the government to a pre-shutdown level. Your response to that?
So I think, again, it's a bunch of smoking mirrors. They're not telling the whole story. The bill is not all about just paying the troops. I don't believe that Democrats don't want to pay the troops, but we also want to ensure that subsidies are being paid for. There's a reason why we are trying to prevent this bill from passing it in the way that it's current in its current state. And so it's easy for Republicans to change the narrative. Just like when they first came out saying Democrats were all about providing these subsidies for undocumented immigrants, which is completely not true. Undocumented immigrants do not qualify for subsidies, nor do they qualify for Medicaid. And so they're consistently gaslighting the American people on what Democrats are actually trying to do. And Democrats right now are actually working for American families, for middle and low income members throughout the United States that can't afford quality health care. And again, is that what the Republican Party wants to do? They want to eliminate these subsidies to take away accessibility for people's health? Is that what we've come to?
So, George, Matt is actually fixing his connection. In the meantime, do you think that this is the same continuing resolution that Democrats have voted in the past?
Well, Democrats want to be able to see that. So let's go back to like social programs like SNAP and WIC benefits, subsidies for Medicare. These are helping people that don't necessarily have the means that provides sort of a bridge to be able to help people become more self-sufficient, be able to receive the quality of care that they need. No child, no person should go hungry at night. No one should not receive services, medical services, simply because we draw this political line. That's not what America is about, and that's what we're doing right now. We're politicizing what's in the best interest of the American people right now, and all we're doing is finger pointing. And so right now, remember, Democrats do not have control of the House and the Senate. They're using the power that they have in order to provide a negotiation tactic, and Republicans are not showing up to have those conversations.
Okay, George, I'll ask you one more thing and then I'll go to Matt. I think he's back now. He raised a point earlier and I would like your response. Why not open the government and then we can talk about healthcare or debate about anything once federal employees are being paid?
Because then it's going to be too late. Then what's going to happen? There's going to be millions of Americans that are going to see their premiums double or triple, not getting this that they need. We're going to see loss of life because of that, because of those choices. And Republicans have proven that they don't want to work with Democrats. They want to pass what it is that they want to pass, and they don't necessarily compromise with Democrats. So why would we believe that they are willing to do the right thing after we open up the government?
Okay, so Matt, I think you heard what George said, right? Can you give us a response?
Yeah. Well, look, the subsidies, first of all, the subsidies that they pass tend to go toward middle and upper income voters. Again, this is just a pure government handouts that the Democrats desperately want to expand Obamacare to more and more Americans. The way to do this, if they want to do this, is let's have a straight up or down vote. Don't hold the American people hostage by shutting down the government, and certainly don't do money to people who are in this country illegally and no legitimate claim to receiving taxpayer benefits. Period. End of subject. The Schumer shutdown is holding the American people hostage, and the American public will take it out on the Democrats in 2026.
Okay, Matt, I'll just give you one more question here. So George was saying that if we open the government, then it would be too late because, I'm paraphrasing here, it seems like Republicans don't want to work with Democrats.
Well, that's a good Democratic talking point, and it's ironic given that the massive spending that occurred when Joe Biden was in office was a strict party line vote. Now, look, we have bipartisan support here. There are 4 Democratic senators who voted for a clean continuing resolution, and George just doesn't want to acknowledge. He would rather let the most radical progressive left in the Democratic Party hold this country hostage. And look, the Republicans aren't going to believe it. The voting public is not going to believe it. And it's going to help the Republicans in 2026 because they will see how extreme the Democrats are. They would rather fund health care for people who are here illegally, not pay our armed forces, cut crime, funding, all because they want to fund their radical groups like Antifa. This is straight out of the Democratic progressive playbook, and the American public sees through it.
Okay, we just have about maybe 30 seconds here. George, if you have any final thoughts you'd like to share, and then we can leave the conversation there.
Sure. It's not about being radical. It's not about a left-leaning agenda. It's about American taxpayers. It's about subsidies for Medicare. And the lies, the continuation of undocumented immigrants, again, they don't qualify. This is not about undocumented immigrants. This is about low to middle income families. These subsidies will help them to be able to have accessibility. And so all of this rhetoric, this is about the health and safety of the American people. And that's what it comes down to.
All right, I think we can leave the conversation there. I'm sure more can be said, but thank you both for coming on today.
Thanks a million.
It's now a good time to invest in gold. With gold prices at a record high, NTD Sean Marshall spoke with some gold dealers in Manhattan's Diamond District about how business is going. We have that story and more after this break.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School, college first round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating. But I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
So we have breaking news here. On the way back to the United States from NATO's defense ministers meeting, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth's plane made an unscheduled landing in the United Kingdom. And this was due to a crack in the aircraft windshield. So the plane landed based on standard procedures, and everyone on board, including Secretary Hegseth, is safe. And the emergency happened when the Secretary of War is flying back to the States after the meeting. And the Air Force C-32 carrying Secretary Pete Hegseth was over the Atlantic, and it dropped to about 10,000 feet and now reversed course to the UK. Okay, moving on. A nuclear initiative that aims to provide energy resilience for the U.S. The military will be installing microreactors on U.S. Army bases around the world. The Army and the Department of Energy will work together on what's called the Janus program. Microreactors will be able to generate power without relying on fossil fuels. The Army said the program aims to provide resilient, secure, and assured energy to support national defense installations and critical missions. Officials noted that during future conflicts in the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. will need to be able to access power like never before. The microreactors on Army bases will be commercially owned and operated. Authorities expect the first reactor developed at the Idaho National Laboratory to go critical by next July. Stellantis is making its biggest U.S. investment ever, $13 billion to expand domestic manufacturing over the next 4 years. The automaker says the move will boost U.S. vehicle production by 50% and create more than 5,000 jobs across Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. Stellantis will launch new vehicles, including the next-generation Dodge Durango in Detroit and an all-new mid-size truck in Toledo, Ohio. The automaker also plans to reopen its Belvidere assembly plant in Illinois, adding 3,300 jobs and producing Jeep Cherokee and Compass models. The company will refresh 19 products across its U.S. plants through 2029. The expansion comes as Stellantis works to offset billions in tariffs on Canadian and Mexican production implemented under the Trump administration to boost domestic production. Everything is bigger in Texas, including Meta's new data center. The facility can scale to a 1 gigawatt site, which is enough energy to power a city the size of San Francisco for a day. This will make it one of the largest planned data center campuses in the U.S. Meta Platforms announced that it would invest $1.5 billion for the data center in El Paso. This is Meta's third facility of its kind in the state and the 29th in the world. The social media giant is expanding its infrastructure to support AI workloads. Meta expects the new data center to come online in 2028. Once operational, the new facility is projected to create about 100 jobs. Gold surged above $4,000 an ounce for the first time ever on October 8th. Department stores like Tiffany's have to consider raising their jewelry prices for customers. And the Diamond District in New York City is bustling with people looking to sell and buy gold to hedge their bets against inflation of the dollar. NTD's Sean Marshall has more on the story.
Mentions of renewed tariff threats against China helped to push gold up to a new record high with an average around $4,200. But what effects does the rising worth of gold have on department stores and dealers of the precious metal?
It's always good to invest in gold. You have to buy right and buy it from the right person. And, it's a commodity, basically,
In Manhattan's Diamond District, people work on the streets to bring in possible customers to the many jewelry stores in the area. At 55 West, 47th Street, and Manhattan, New York, you can find a hidden gem of sorts. Inside, diamond specialist and gold dealer Albert Chasm has a near endless amount of people coming and going all day, looking for deals on gold, diamond, and watches.
A lot of people are more cautious now to spend. So I do see a lot of people now more selling their older jewelry, trying to cash out while the gold is high, all-time high.
Is now a good time to buy gold? While I was there, a jewelry whale named Jimmy from Lambertsville had just bought an entire jewelry booth and was looking to buy Albert's entire stock.
Somebody just came here and offered to buy my whole showcase. And to be honest with you, I didn't have a number, number one. I didn't have a number on top of my head. Number two, I'm not even interested in selling. The way gold is going right now, for me to sell now would be at a loss. I would make more money just holding it. But it was, I appreciate the offer, though. He would have to write a big fat check.
For anyone wondering if they should wait a little while longer before buying gold, Maury of Royal Diamonds says now is a good time.
When you buy gold, you have the upper hand. Like if you, as an individual, invest $100,000 back in year 2001, buy now without doing anything, no broker, no experience, no nothing, just to invest $100,000 in gold. 20 years ago, by now, it's worth $1,400,000 without doing nothing. Just lock it in the safe deposit bank.
For Tiffany owner LVMH and others in the high-end goods industry, the doubling of gold prices in 2 years, along with U.S. tariffs and a weaker dollar, have made it harder to make money while keeping prices steady for customers. Analysts say as brands seek to ease pressure on margins, they would need to be cautious about passing on price increases to shoppers as not to erode demand.
In 1970-something, gold was $200 an ounce. If you bought gold in the 70s, today you'll be a rich person.
Sean Marshall, NTD News.
President Trump will soon have a press conference with FBI Director Patel in the Oval Office on reducing violent crime across the country. Stay tuned after this break.
Food. It fuels our bodies, nourishes our spirits, and brings us together. Because we all need nutritious food to thrive.
Food gives me energy and it also helps me focus.
But not everyone knows where their next meal is coming from. And 1 in 7 people in America face hunger. It's tougher than ever for too many of us. But the simple truth is, ending hunger is possible, and it starts with you. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, to help families in your community facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. Your monthly gift delivers food where it's needed most, puts fresh food on the table, and helps kids have healthy meals all year round, even when school is out.
You can see the difference with the kids when they're full. Food is everything.
Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Give $19 a month. Your first gift can double an impact.